And this specific podcast was on certainty and on being certain, even if you may be incorrect. And to me, it really brought me back to, okay, first of all, let me just say, by nature, I'm a very curious person, asking questions constantly. I've been like this my whole entire life. It's gotten me into trouble, but mostly it's been a good thing.
And she just was so confident in her response because that was her aha moment. Like, oh, that makes sense. That dinosaurs were on other planets and that's how they landed onto this planet because, Heavenly Father made this planet out of all the other planets or something. And it's just here to kind of fool us.
The feeling of confidence, right? As a sensation, the feeling of confidence is what the church wants you to feel, right? Because according to Richard Burton, like the feeling of confidence is more important than actual facts and actual truth.
There are all these things that I can choose to go and do, and pernicious is the word that comes to my mind, but I don't know if that's right. The pernicious thing about the church is that it gets you in that black and white mode of thinking that there is this right way if you follow the Spirit and follow what you're supposed to be doing, and if not, you are off the path. When in reality, there's infinite paths that all of us are taking all the time, and one path might lead to me falling down a cliff and breaking my leg, but then I notice these incredible flowers as I'm laying on the ground.
This is Infants on Thrones.
Baby steps.
You want someone to preach to you.
The philosophies of men.
I like magical toys.
You want religion, do you?
Mingled with humor.
I don't believe in them.
There will be many willing to preach to you the philosophies of men mingled with humor.
We are evolving.
Baby steps.
You can buy anything in this world of money.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone.
All right, welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and this is episode 800. The certainty of being certain and other aha moments, I guess. I don't know. And today you will once again be hearing from the new quorum of Jessica.
First of all, let me just say, by nature, I'm a very curious person.
Reed.
Oh, that makes sense. That dinosaurs were on other planets.
Wren.
The feeling of confidence is more important than actual facts and actual truth, right?
And Curt.
Me falling down a cliff and breaking my leg, but then I notice these incredible flowers as I'm laying on the ground with a broken leg.
Who are all awesome. Yes, I am quite certain of that. And maybe I'll pop in once or twice along the way, but now.
Hang on to them hats and glasses, cause this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
Wren, you mentioned swallowing a toothpick. I had a when I was in high school, I remember walking down the hall and this friend was walking towards me the other way, and he looked like he had almost died, just barely. And as he walks by, he goes, "Don't try to swallow a wheat thin whole."
All right.
Anyway.
Well, hello everybody. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Good.
We've got Reed and Wren and Curt and me, Jessica, which I don't know. I can't decide if I like Jess or Jessica better, but whatever works. So last week we talked about conference, and we're taking a detour into territory that's a little bit more my jam lately. More things that interest me currently, which this definitely has a tie to Mormonism and a lot of what the process was like going through figuring out what I believed or why I believed it. So listening to podcasts, my interest kind of sparks when I hear things that, resonate with that kind of process or journey. And there was one specifically this last week It was You Are Not So Smart podcast. That's the title, with, is it David McCraney? I think that's his name. Wren, is that
Sounds right? Yeah, that sounds right.
David? Okay.
Yeah.
And I've listened to him for a while. He did a really good series on, what's it called? When you, like, logical fallacies.
Yeah.
When you're, and that I remember just kind of blew my mind, and I saw him everywhere. And that's the kind of thing I like, is when I learn about a subject or I learn about an idea, and then I just start seeing it in all aspects. And this specific podcast was on certainty and on being certain, even if you may be incorrect. And to me, it really brought me back to, okay, first of all, let me just say, by nature, I'm a very curious person, asking questions constantly. I've been like this my whole entire life. It's gotten me into trouble, but mostly it's been a good thing, until in church, it really felt like that was a no-no. Like, you couldn't really ask the questions. And that was kind of a memo that was loud and clear to me. So for me, it's a really fun arena to be able and feel like I have permission to ask all the questions. What do you guys?
Can I jump in? What did you feel like either growing up or in a church or whatever? Like, how did you all feel? Did you feel like you had permission to ask all the questions? Like, did you want to? Did that come up in your brain at all? Like,
when you say all the questions, meaning questions about church,
did you ever have questions
claims
that you wanted to ask that you felt like you couldn't ask?
I honestly,
Sure.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, well, I feel like my experience is a little weird because my mom left the church when I was young. So I got this weird background of what I was taught at church and then what my mom shared with me. So I had competing ideas, and growing up, I was kind of confused as to what do I think about this? There's this information, and then there's this church information, and then becoming active again myself, I just shut down one whole section of questions in exchange for a set of approved questions. And I learned those, I repeated those often, and I just kind of turned off that switch of the more introspective, the more going deeper type of questions.
I was going to say, I think that I never felt like I couldn't ask any questions. And, this podcast that we listened to about being certain, it really made me think a lot about the Spirit, basically, right? The Holy Ghost.
Oh, yeah.
And how much like that mindset, or the way to confirm truth through your feelings, tied into what this guy was talking about. And so, like, I felt like when I was like in the church that I knew the answers to all the questions, right? So there was no point to ask any questions because, like, I already know. And like any kind of question that I would think to ask that might be like taboo or something, I'd be like, that has a very simple answer. Right. And, like that feeling of certainty, I felt it like very strongly.
Yeah, that's one thing that I found really, really interesting, the way that he kind of discussed. And then I also want to say really quick, there's a second podcast that I'm also going to be referring to, and that's On Being. And it has Robert Burton, who's the author of this book. Oh, wait, no, that's not right.
Yes.
What's the podcast
Robert
called?
Burton.
Yeah, that's the author, but what's the podcast called?
It's Econ Talk with Russ
Econ
Roberts.
Talk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is just an
Burton.
exciting sounding podcast, by the way. Econ Talk. Okay, so before we go, I also wanted to just add real quick, Robert Burton, his voice. How would you describe his voice after listening to it a couple times now? I thought it has like this drywall metallic sounding. It's like it's simultaneously low but really high teeny. I don't know. It was just my observation. I guess I was the only one bothered by it, or maybe not bothered by it, but it was just like, wow, when this guy talks, it's interesting. It's an interesting voice.
He's like, I think he's pretty old, right? Like, I think he worked as a professor for a lot of years and then retired several years ago. And like, maybe that just comes with age, like, Boyd K. Packer sounding.
Yeah, that could be. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I need to know these things. I am afraid to ask what my voice sounds like now, but the thing I thought was fascinating, and the way that I kind of let things stick in my mind, is to use metaphor, and just, it really became more clear to me the way he was talking about, the different neural pathways that we're building around what we know. We're adding elements in. If we're raised in an environment where we're given a set of beliefs, those are the components of what we're building and what we know. And so two of you guys have kids, and those like Marble Works games, like with the pieces, and you put them together and you put the marble at the top and it goes down. Yeah. Anyway, follow me here. Like, I imagine the way he was describing, like, we're collecting these pieces and putting them together as this expected flow of thought. When a thought enters into our mind, it is going down the loop, and it's hitting all the marks, and we know exactly what it's going to do. Well, if we're getting new sensations or new stimuli or whatever, some of those pieces might be in disarray, or something happens, then we replace them. But that can leave you feeling really uncomfortable, like looking at it, if it's not going down the right, I don't know, loop or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. And the focus there is on the feelings, right? Like that feeling of uncomfortableness. And like, we should talk about like what his like central like claim is that your thoughts or your beliefs, knowledge doesn't come to you through like a logical process. It's something, he says in there, that like it's something that happens to you, and it's a feeling that you experience, like a sensation of confidence and a sensation of certainty. Like, you don't become certain through like rationality, is his kind of main claim, right?
Yeah, right.
I went back and listened to him explain this probably 5 times over the last week or so. And it's like a lot of it is tricky to wrap your brain around. Exactly. I mean, for me, speaking specifically on making sure that I understand, like, because he talked about certainty, about conclusions, like feeling like conclusions, but they're not actually conclusions. They're actually like feelings that you have, right? And that concept, I think a lot of it gets tied up in language and how we think about language. But it is like, it's this emergent quality that arises that we don't understand between all of the neural networks that are firing in the background of your brain. And then there's like the conscious part of your brain that is realizing what's going on, but is totally unaware. He talks about that hidden layer, like between the unconscious and the conscious, and totally unaware of what's happening with the unconscious, is like incredibly fascinating to me.
Yeah. And I think, Jess, getting back to what you were talking about with that as well, like, when you talk about these like different experiences, or that metaphor you use about building like a marble set or a race car track kind of thing.
It's not fully formed.
That's all right. That's all right. Like, we don't really understand how that's built, kind of what Curt's talking about, that hidden layer. Like, it's built through our experience and through life, but we're not the architects of that little marble tower, right?
Right.
Or, I don't know. Do you think that that's true? Like, do you feel like you are the architect of your thought tower, I guess? Marble thought tower.
And this is the thought tower to determine what's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, so he talked about, like, I remember him specifically talking about, there's like the unconscious part, there's the conscious part, and then sometimes like the conscious part can influence the unconscious part again, right? Like, that's the whole idea of like the street epistemology or deep canvassing that he talked about, and getting people to change their minds or whatever, which is like allowing yourself to change, like the conscious act of changing your neural pathways and stuff. And I hope, right, like Ren, to answer your question, I hope that we can change that stuff, because that's what I'm trying to do with therapy and coaching, and like becoming a better person and changing like the automatic thoughts that come up or feelings that come up, or being able to notice those things and then like reform them and redirect my thoughts and feelings. So I hope so, is my answer.
I think we can get even a little bit more like specific on some of the things he was talking about with regards to like the aha moment.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do you know of like specific examples of aha moments in your life?
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh,
they
sorry.
gave an example in both of these podcasts that really illustrated that moment of not understanding and then something clicking or falling into place, and then it just makes sense. And I don't know about you, but our kids love video games, and sometimes I'll get home from the store or something and I'll hear a conversation and I'm putting stuff away and it makes no sense, the conversation that's going on. Like they're talking words that I don't know. It's a new game or whatever. And then the minute that it dawns on me that they're not talking to each other, they're talking to the video game people or whatever. And it makes perfect sense. But it's almost like an unease that you feel when you're unsure. And then the minute that puzzle piece kind of falls into place, it just feels like a conclusion, like this is, a revelation of I understand.
Yeah.
I think that's at the root of why our belief system in the LDS Church was continually prolonged. Or I should, so let me just give a really quick example, something that I think about and just kind of laugh to myself, but I'm obviously guilty of doing a lot of this. So when my brother was talking to my parents after just talking through his kind of faith crisis with them and delivering the news, they started going through questions he had, like doubts. And one of them was, well, the earth obviously wasn't created in 6,000 years or, 6 days or whatever, time period. And my mom kind of said back to him just very, very confidently, well, I got an answer for that. All the world was created out of many other worlds that had dinosaurs, because his question was like, why are there dinosaurs? Why are there, these other, and she just was so confident in her response because that was her aha moment. Like, oh, that makes sense, that dinosaurs were on other planets and that's how they landed onto this planet. Cause Heavenly Father made this planet out of all the other planets or something. And it's just here to kind of fool us into thinking that, it was created a long time ago. But for her, she just stopped the wondering and the investigation. And to her, that solved her issue, her question. And that then she knew what was, how that worked. Right. So I think of that as a aha moment and then it made me think like, okay, how many aha moments have I had in my life where that completely is now in doubt of, what I experienced as an aha moment of discovering some other truth. So I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it keeps you like in that, comfortable state to have those like aha moments. The way they talked about it on the podcasts we listened to, he almost like called it a type of like pleasure, right? Like a thing in your brain that gives you like this pleasure that you feel as confidence, as like a sensation. Which I thought was really cool.
Well, and then too, it kind of begs the question, what are we really in pursuit of when we're wanting certainty? Is it truth? Like, is it, comfort? Is it safety? And I think all of those things are reasonable in their own spheres, depending on what you're, talking about or questioning. I know for me with church, there was a lot of just security in having answers, and the certainty that came from that was worth, more than to kind of set aside some of the detailed things and just allow it to be what it was. So I belonged and it felt good. So.
Yeah, I think that this kind of sounds nefarious, but I'm going to say some things, and it's going to sound like I'm accusing the church of doing this, but I'm not really accusing the church of doing this. I think the church has just naturally fallen into a type of persuasion that uses these like pathways in your brain, right? Like this notion that, or the feeling of confidence, right? As a sensation, the feeling of confidence is what the church wants you to feel, right? Because according to what's his name, Richard Burton, like the feeling of confidence is more important than actual facts and actual like truth, right? Like it doesn't. Yeah. So if you're in an organization, or if an organization can make you feel confident, then that's all they need to do for you to be loyal and invested in it, right? And like that's exactly, in my mind, I was thinking, I had an aha moment that this is that's what the Spirit is. That's what the Holy Ghost is, right? It's seeking that feeling of truth or that feeling of confidence. And so like it's a weird like co-opt of your brain's own like
mechanisms.
Yeah.
Well, like Wren, you said, like the church, like there's probably no necessarily like one individual responsible, or like it's not nefarious that has been like the tool. But it's not just the church, right? I mean, it's like most churches and like political parties and other groups all across the world, obviously, like use these same ideas and techniques to get people to conform or believe one way or feel good about an idea. Like I was thinking, like just the idea, like within church, of like repeating things over and over and again, like in young women's talk, like saying the young women's values every week, or like temple,
testimony meetings,
stuff in the temple, testimony meetings, like all of that stuff. Like obviously that's a technique that's used to like sort of short circuit's maybe not the right word, but get you to like believe something or think something, is to just repeat it over and over. I don't know if any of you have watched Severance on Apple TV.
I have.
But it's so good. It's so good. But they like, without like, this isn't really a spoiler or anything like that. Like they have this like group of people who they need to keep conformed, right? And keep them thinking one way and feeling one way. And if they step out of line, like they're in an office place, they step out of line, they have to go to the break room, which is like play on words with like break, but they will break you mentally. Go in a break room, and then they just have to repeat something over and over and again until like they're at a lie detector test, and until they are not lying anymore as they're saying it, but like they'll have to repeat it for hours and hours and hours. But it's like that exact same idea right here of like, if an organization or a group or family or friends or whatever wants you to be certain, like there's certain things that you can do to influence someone and sort of short circuit or like dive into the deep mind, I guess, like is like how I think about it, and kind of bypass that like that logical piece, right?
Yeah, they're like getting into that hidden layer, and trying to like build the marble tower the way they want to build it.
Well, if you think about it too, even on just a personal level, day to day being motivated, I know with church, it's a big emphasis on acts. Have I done any good in the world today? Have I helped anyone in need? Service and staying engaged in callings. And what is more motivating than certainty? I feel like the bigger the certainty, like the greater the influence that you have oftentimes. I know that my Redeemer lives. What comfort even at a personal level, I think about my kids or me getting up in the morning and I'm like, if I'm unsure about everything, why would I go to the store? I was really, I don't know, questioning everything, like I can see how that would create a lot of complacency. And, even just your attitude of saying, this is going to be such a good day. I feel that on a personal level, just adding those things in, even if I have no idea. And I know I have no idea, I can try to believe that it's going to be good.
Have you ever go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you feel like you're so this feels to me like it's like the conscious trying to affect the unconscious
for sure
self here. Do you feel like that's what you're doing when you're doing it?
Yeah, it feels, well, for me, just especially because I'm interested in this stuff, it feels at times experimental, and then just practicing bypassing whatever is already there. I think for me too, because after you leave a structure like we did, it does come crumbling down. And you are left in rubble trying to, pick back up pieces and use whatever to build something that you do feel certain enough about. And in doing that, you have to get creative and you get used to that process. And I can see it going in the direction of you just, going from I know to I know nothing, nothing's worth it. And so finding that middle ground, it's almost like accepting we don't really know, but we do have control. And so using that somehow, I don't know, it's probably helpful.
Yeah, when you were talking, Jess, it kind of brought up for me, like the counter of the aha moment, right? We talk about the aha moment as this feeling of certainty, but you were talking about like these feelings of uncertainty. And I was thinking about have you ever been with a bunch of friends and you're like, well, what do you guys want to do?
Hey, Flaps, what are we gonna do? And
nobody wants, is certain about anything, or
I don't know. What do you want to do?
Somebody always is like, well, whatever you want to do. Well, I don't know. Maybe we could do this. Well, yeah, if everybody wants to do that, we can do that. Or, well, I don't know.
Hey, now don't start that again.
That's so awkward, and it's such a painful feeling to not be certain.
Frustrating.
Somebody just decide, be certain about it, and we'll follow.
Well, that's the thing. I think on my bad days, I'm kind of laying there just somebody tell me what to do. Somebody tell me, and it's the things I already know, but there was such comfort in having structure of I do this on this day and I have family night and I have meetings and, that's not just given to you naturally. You have to create that.
So can I talk about an aha moment that I had this last week, actually?
You better.
So, and it ties in perfectly to what Wren and Jess, you guys are talking about here right now. So having a conversation this last week, and I was in a very black and white mode of thinking, like there's a right path for me here and there's a wrong path for me here. And this was, I guess I'll just say this was coaching with Glenn. And so I was talking to Glenn about this and
hey, Glenn,
hey, Glenn, if you would like to jump in here and give your thoughts. That'd be fantastic.
Hey, now don't start that again.
So coaching with Glenn about this, thinking about there is a correct path for me in my life here. And there's a wrong path. And just talking through this with him and then hearing his response back was a total aha moment. Oh yeah, there's not just this one right way or wrong way for you to go about living your life right now. It's not black and white. It's this was the vision that I had in my mind as I was thinking about it, not black and white, but it's a rainbow of options here. There's blue and purple and indigo, if that's your jam or whatever, and there are all these things that I can choose to go and do. And the pernicious is the word that comes to my mind, but I don't know if that's right. The pernicious thing about the church is that it gets you in that black and white mode of thinking that there is this right way if you follow the Spirit and follow what you're supposed to be doing, and if not, you are off the path. When in reality, there's infinite paths that all of us are taking all the time, and like one path might lead to like me falling down a cliff and breaking my leg, but then I like notice these incredible flowers as I'm laying on the ground with a broken leg, and then I can like help someone else out who's at the bottom of the cliff with me, and then like we create this incredible, beautiful path together somewhere else. You know, it's like that black and white of like you're on the path or you're not on the path. It shortcuts our ability to like own our own actions in our lives, I think.
For sure. That kind of gets to the thing that like bothered me almost the most, was the fact that everyone's saying, you know, listen to these talks and, you know, you'll get a confirmation. And I was always just like, what, how do I know if, you know, I'm thinking this, I'm listening to this talk and I'm inspired, so-and-so's listening to this talk, they're not inspired, you know, like what happens if my aha moment happens outside of, you know, these boundaries of, you know, like, I think we talked about this a little bit last week with, you know, feeling inspired by things that weren't church, you know, driven or produced. And I don't know, that to me, it's just so obvious. It feels like now that we're all experiencing something totally different when we're listening to talks, and we're going to apply those things in very different ways, and to expect that we'll do it in the same, you know, take the same words and apply it in the same way, which, I mean, I don't assume that everyone feels that way exactly, but that's kind of that's like the gist of it, right?
Yeah, there is a, you know, a conclusion you're supposed to come to, right? And
yeah, and well, I mean, and it's to keep you on the covenant path, is to keep you in, you know, in line with the way, but then, you know, you might be missing out on the detour, like Curt's talking about, you know, like there can be so much beauty in the way that we, you know, take charge of our own, have those aha moments and realize them, think about them, apply them, you know, but doesn't feel like you're really allowed to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like Richard Burton is saying, you know, conclusions aren't real. They're like these illusions that don't really exist. What is real is that feeling that you have inside. And in the church, like, they're trying to teach you, yes, that feeling that you have inside is real, but it's pointing you to this conclusion,
right?
That is also real. Trust us.
Yeah. One thing I don't remember which episode it was in, but I'm always, anytime this kind of thing gets brought up, it always blows my mind. Just the fact that, like, I think the example was like a husband and wife watching a car accident, and at the retinal level, the input is the same, but the minute that it passes that to the conscious level, you're perceiving things completely differently. You could be, you know, your accounts of what you're experiencing could be wildly different, even in the same position, the same view. And that, I see that everywhere. I see that in politics. I see that in, you know, religious circles and, you know, communities and schools. Like, it's just the minute, though, I think we can learn that and like have the ability to really think about that when we're interacting with people. That's what breaks down those, you know, oh, it's got to be this way, it's got to be that way. It's like, oh, well, of course you're going to think about it like that if you live over there and you look out your window and you see that, or I don't know.
Like, well, I mean, it sounds like one of the things you're getting at, Jess, is empathy, like being able to, well, no, like, well, I'm certain you're getting to this right now, which is empathy, like being able to like understand that someone else has a totally separate life experience and like biology that has led them to feel and believe the things that they believe, and that there are perfectly good reasons that they believe those things, or are certain about those things or uncertain about those things. And that, like, what I would want is that someone else would be able to understand that about me as well. You know, like that's what I really want. I want to be able to provide that to other people, and then also for other people to reciprocate that same feeling back to me.
Yeah, that's what everyone wants. Right?
Well, I mean, it gets to like the idea of, I mean, we brought this, or I think I talked about this just a minute ago, but like on changing people's minds, you know, like with street epistemology or deep canvassing, or he talked about like a pyramid one. I don't know if you guys, I wasn't familiar with that one at all, but the first piece of all of this, which gets to empathy, is like being able to like come across as nice and likable, and like shut down any initial barriers that someone would have to you if you're actually trying to change their mind, but just be like, I'm not going to be rude to you. I'm not going to belittle your beliefs. I'm just going to be friendly. And we're just like here to have a conversation and come across as not threatening and very respectful. But then like you actually have to be respectful and not just say that you're respectful. Right. Which anyway, just getting to the empathy, like that actual caring about someone and what they believe. It's something that I really want for other people and for other people to provide to me, you know, which like, sorry, and I'm just going off here, but like when it comes to the church, like, I think that's a huge deal with so many people who leave is not feeling like you have the respect of those people that you cared about for so long, you know, like that they don't understand or respect your position. And, you know, who knows how many times they do understand or respect it, but to just that desire to be heard and understood and validated, it's real. And I don't think for the most part, like doctrine and church leaders want the membership to go out and understand people's positions who have left, right? In fact, quite the opposite.
Yes. I think there's slow progress, but that for sure, it's just not a skill that's applied in that way. You know, and I had moments too. I had an aha moment like a year ago when I was having conversations and just wanting people to understand me so bad. I just needed to find the right words and the right things, you know, the right way to explain, and it wasn't working. And I realized, well, why would I think it would work? Like they don't know the experiences and the feelings that I've had when I've had all these aha moments, you know, like that you can't explain that to somebody. And so for me, it was a moment of, what am I expecting from this relationship? Or what, you know, how am I viewing this person as being capable of seeing me where I am? And I seeing them where they are, you know? And so it's kind of been a reoccurring thing to me now where I go, what do I want for myself in this relationship? Is it being understood? How can I understand this person better? And it's just I don't know, figuring that out. But,
well, so you mentioned an aha moment. Are there like, I'm curious if any of you have thought about any like major aha moments, whether it was like leaving the church or since then that you've had, where it's just like an epiphany where you exactly what we're talking about. You know what I mean? Just like felt this rush of immediate right then, I understand the truth of the universe.
Let me jump in here. For me, I feel like aha moments are when you've more fully put something in its context, or more fully see something, or realize, I guess, see something in its fuller context, I should say. So for me, the biggest aha moment I had, from what I recall, I mean, I remember going through, you know, the steps of deconstruction in terms of, you know, looking at all the different facets of like church history. And the biggest one that just wrecked me for days to where I couldn't sleep was listening to Dan Vogel talk about, on Mormon Stories, talk about the history of Joseph Smith and how he was into like the occult practices, and how, you know, Moroni was more of this trickster earlier on with the occult. And it was like this thing that I had struggled with for so long, And finally there was an explanation where it just clicked, and the aha moment happened. And it was so disturbing at the same time, and just kind of really was the final nail in the coffin in a way of everything that I thought was real. So for me, that was like, but what that was doing was putting the Joseph Smith experience in more of a fuller context of the relationship he had with kind of the culture at that time, with the magical practices of that time, and really kind of helped me understand, like, okay, well, this totally makes sense. Like his, when but at the same time, that was an aha moment. I realized, and also listening to these podcasts, how I need to be more epistemologically humble with how I feel I know things, and just realize that we'll never be able to recreate everything that happened during that time period. Never in our, it's just impossible. Yeah. And so I have to realize that, this is just Dan Vogel's viewpoint and what he's pieced together based on additional information that I didn't have before, but I feel it's better information. So
I think that's interesting, Reed. Like you talked about that aha moment, both being like satisfying and feeling good, and then also causing you a lot of internal anguish. I mean, at the same time, right? Like really bifurcated feelings, opposite spectrum, it sounds like.
Yeah,
which
for sure.
Yeah. I have a question for you all here. Something I was thinking about as I was listening to this, kind of over and over, was like, I really view like being so completely wrong about something in your life, and then like changing your mind about it as a blessing, if I can use that term. I value it quite a bit, because like realizing I thought I was so certain about something, or no, I was so certain about something, and then went through whatever life experiences, and changed my mind, and makes me question a lot of other things. And then I was like, as I was listening to this, I was thinking, what things am I certain about now that I could potentially change my mind on in the future? Like what can I be certain? What am I certain about now that may not be certain about next year or in 10 years or whatever? Have you guys thought about that?
It's great. For me, it's life is tough. It's constant chaos, and we need to love each other as much as we can, and try to approach each other in a very understanding, empathetic way to try to help each other through it and alleviate suffering. That's, for me, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get around that.
Here's something that I was thinking of when I was listening to that kind of goes along with this, because I realized, and it's something I've noticed in friends and family and people in my community that are still very active, is, they too will say, well, we don't know what's going to happen. Like we don't know, day to day or job or whatever. But there are pillars of certainty still that are there, like general authorities, prophet, and they're held up as these symbols of someone who knows. Okay, it's okay if I don't know, everything. Somebody does. Yeah. And so when you lose that, then you're kind of left to figure out, okay, without that pillar of, because for me, that was also a big part of, deconstructing, was this aha moment of like, oh, these are just guys totally. That are figuring things out just like me, and that, like Reed saying, it felt uncomfortable that it was falling into place that way, but it also gave me permission, like, Reed was saying too, like, okay, this makes sense. Now I can kind of move on. But yeah, it kind of leaves you in that place of uncertainty without the buoy of somebody knowing. Like, yeah. What? I don't know.
That was incredibly frightening for me.
So scary.
It took so many years to kind of work through, and I think I'm in a better place, but like that Yes, boo, exactly, is what is your description of it, Jess. Like, and then just like having that safety, security totally go away, that like, oh, nobody knows. Like nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
It's all up to me to decide how I make meaning.
You can look at that from a very fear-based perspective of nobody knows. But over time, for me, it's evolved more into nobody knows, like we're all in the same boat. We're all figuring this out. Let's be each other's buoys. Like we'll just, anyway, I don't know. I say I don't know a lot, and it's true. It goes along with what we're talking about. I don't know anything, but, yeah. What are your thoughts, Wren?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not certain about anything at all.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, that question, Curt, like, I feel so thrown for a loop in my life. Like, I thought that, growing up, that life would get easier. Things would make more and more sense as you got older. You'd understand things more. But I feel like it's just keeps proving me to be the opposite. Like things are you just learn that you know so little. Like, oh, there's actually more to this to learn about. Yeah. And I have no idea, like what I was thinking, like it is a very uncomfortable feeling. And
So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with uncertainty? Like, what are the tools? What are the things that you use to feel like, I know what I try to do? I feel like replacing, for me, the general authorities or that safety feeling that somebody knows what's going on is, I know what's going on inside of me. And when I get really still or I get really introspective and I feel the peace, that's probably in some ways more personal, obviously if it's inside me, but than what it was externally. And, I'm trying the best I can to teach that to my kids, but you always have you, like wherever you are. And that's the thing, getting to know yourself. The better you can get to know yourself, the more trust you can have in yourself to guide, you through whatever it is that happens.
I took my consecrated oil vial and replaced it with cocaine, which you can keep with you wherever you are. It helped you deal.
Or there's that route.
There you go. Yeah,
I'm really all oily cocaine. Like, how do you use it, Curt? I'm just curious.
We know nothing about cocaine.
I wonder what Glenn thinks about this. We haven't asked Glenn anything tonight.
Glenn thinks that cocaine is no laughing matter, and you should all be ashamed of yourselves.
There we go. Okay, thanks, Glenn. That was informative.
Good. Always good.
Yeah, I deal with it by just leaning really heavily into the uncertainty. Like I'm trying to trick myself into thinking like, no, that's actually a good feeling. Like you were asking or talking earlier, Jess, about that uncomfortableness and that feeling of uncertainty, and like how you ask questions all the time. You know what you were saying? You're like, oh, I ask a lot of questions, and then sometimes it might be awkward, but like, I love that. Like I love in a meeting when somebody asks like a stupid question, because it's like, okay, let's all make sure that we all understand this, because I'm pretty sure 90% of us are just pretending like we understand what everybody's talking about.
Totally. Totally.
Like, Wren, you're so spot on. Well, even like you say a stupid question, but like I had a new individual start on my team this week or last week, and we're like training, doing all sorts of stuff. And she's asking all these questions, which are like basic, but then I have to go and explain them. And I realize that there's shortcomings in my understanding of what's going on, Mm-hmm. And like that idea of asking those silly questions or basic questions, or like just like repeated, like, well, why is that? Well, why is that? Over and over, like helps you understand, like uncover your own shortcomings or misunderstandings.
Yeah.
So can I answer the question that I asked a little while ago?
Oh yeah.
About things that I'm certain on. Although I wish I had Reed's answer. His answer was was the answer that I want to have. Just like reduce suffering.
Nice.
But well, actually, so this is like, I was not certain if it's totally unintentional when I just said that. So like the answer that popped in my brain when I thought of that question was like the scientific method or that approach to coming to understanding in the universe and the world for myself, that sort of thing. Just like being curious about something, coming up with a hypothesis, testing, like, reinterpreting results, all the whole process, like that idea. I don't feel like that will ever change. Like I will ever devalue that, but maybe I will. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's the best method we got as humans right now. What do you think, Wren?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about that in context of the podcast, right? Because listening to those two podcasts with Richard Burton, you can get the sense that like, okay, so the way that you become certain of something is not a rational thing. It's just a feeling you get, right? And so like certainty is all an illusion. It's like he gave that story of the Challenger explosion, right? And all the so there was like 100 psychology students, and there was this professor who was studying like memory, and these were all like psychology students who knew that like memory is a fallible thing. And when it was the Challenger, right? When that blew up, he gathered 100 of his psychology students and had them write it down in their journal, like everything they felt that day, because it's like it was a flashbulb memory, like one of those things that everybody remembers where they were when it happened, kind of a thing. And so then, I can't remember how long it was, like 2 years later or something.
Yeah.
He invited them all back to read their journal entries, and like 90% of them didn't believe that that's how it actually went down, like that the journal entries were wrong, it's pretty amazing.
That's so wild, isn't it?
Yeah. And so you hear that story and you feel like, man, nothing's really certain. Like how could anything be like, how do we know anything? And I was thinking about that because of like, I was like, surely like there are things that are knowable and that you can be certain of, like math. And
Reed, Wren, I'm glad you brought that up, like specifically because you talked about like specifically going back and learning math again, like
yeah.
I see the appeal there. That's certainly an appeal to want to know concrete things.
Yeah.
But even then, Richard Burton talked about this in the podcast. He even talked about the feeling of knowing that 2 + 2 = 4.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Questioning whether you know that or whether that certainty that you get, like how that arises within you, and if that's like a concrete fact or not. And like even me saying this right now feels absolutely ridiculous and asinine to like make that statement.
Mm-hmm.
But the feeling of certainty is the same, regardless if it's 2 + 2 = 4 or God is this or that or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's what he's
claiming.
Claiming. Yeah, that's what he's saying. Yeah.
Well, I think too, a lot of times there's words or phrases that get really negative connotations. So that's something I kind of look for when I'm listening to podcasts like this too, and applying it to things I already know. Like listening to this, of course, I'm thinking of church or I'm thinking of, whatever. But, we think about biases that we have, and how that is a negative thing. Usually it has such a negative connotation, but that it's a function of our brain to allow us to, survive in capacity that we're in. Like there's a story of, he's talking about in recognizing somebody or remembering where somebody lives, you're functioning off of memory of what so, he even said he walked through it, like, say you're going to visit your old friend from childhood, Joe, and you're trying to remember how to get to his house, and you know that it's 2-story, and you roughly remember the color, and you're heading there and you see a house, and it is hitting those markers in your brain of, this is what I know. You knock on the door and it's not Joe, you know? And so then you're left with this feeling of like, wait, what? I thought I knew. Like, this is challenging, you know? And then there's even people in that scenario that I would imagine being like kind of what he was saying, like, where's Joe? Who's hiding Joe? He must be tied up in the back. And you see this everywhere, though, with people when they're presented with new information that does not jive. It's almost, you know, that discomfort feeling can override that ability to say, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong here. Which is really helpful.
That totally makes me think of I don't know if you guys use TikTok at all, but I think it might be like the Daily Show, but this guy goes into the Trump crowds, like the rallies, and asks very simple questions. And like the last one I saw, the lady said that, you know, Princess Diana was alive, and just went on and on about these just QAnon type conspiracies. And he kind of presents, you know, he uses like some street epistemology kind of ways of questioning and helping them question. And he just, you know, it's to go, the whole idea is to show that how dumb they are, right? But they can't look at the facts and make a conclusion. But I think this kind of goes right back to the fact, the way that that this aha moment, these guys have all had aha moments with their conspiracy theories to help them understand, you know, the world. And, you know, they don't want to, that's their understanding of the world, and presenting facts is not going to help. It doesn't matter, which I think is just fascinating. So,
well, yeah, but like, okay, ready for the aha moment for me is like, there are perfectly valid and logical and good reasons for them to feel the way they do about whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like whether the earth is flat or whatever, like it's not like the when my ego gets in the way, I feel like, oh, like these people are idiots or something like that. But then I think about what's actually going on physiologically and in their brains and everything, and like their biology and their history and background and all their experiences have led them to this point where they feel certain about something, whether it's you know Princess Diana or the earth is flat or contrails or you know dumping chemicals all throughout the country, whatever it is. Like there are valid reasons why they feel what they feel.
Yeah,
and
totally.
not, yeah.
I was going to say, I think there's a difference though too in recognizing that and understanding, you know, that process in a person. And then also, because faith is another thing, which I kind of want to talk about too, but I don't know if we have time for that. But I don't believe all of those leaps are equal. There's not like I think there is some sort of hierarchy of claims that we make about certainty or allowing, you know, there has to be something. I don't know. Help me out here.
Yeah, like that's what I was feeling the same way, because in my mind, like when you talk about like a hierarchy of knowledge or like a hierarchy of things you can be certain about, in my mind, like math is the number one. Like, okay, this thing's got to be right. Well, that's just my life experience. Is that like, I don't know, it's just drilled into me that like math is reality. It's reality.
Is math just like the most commonly agreed upon method? Is that the real thing about it?
I don't know. Like it could.
Is it the thing that's lasted time? Like the concept that's been, you know, transferable most?
Yeah, that gets that question that Curt asked earlier about like what are some things that you're certain of now that, you know, maybe they won't be, like you won't be certain of them later. Like the confidence that I feel about math is I just have that feeling, but does that line up with reality, I guess? And you've got to, at some point, you have to act as if it does.
Okay, that's
you know
faith.
Exact.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because to me, that's another thing where coming from church, we're like, oh, faith, like we don't like these words, but we're all taking leaps of faith every single day that, the earth's not going to explode. Or my daughter, who's afraid of tornadoes, she thinks a tornado is going to come every time there's a dark cloud. So we're taking leaps of faith every time we're making any choice, really. Like any decision we're making is I don't know.
Which is a degree of certainty, isn't it?
It is. Well, that's the whole thing too, of attitude influencing, the way that we're making decisions. Like, what kind of progress are we making in the world from the perspective that we have? I don't know. Okay, I said I don't know again. Anyway.
It sounds like you're not certain about anything.
And really, I think one of the bottom line things when it comes to background in church is that doubt is just so uncomfortable. Certainty is just so comfortable. We prefer that. It makes sense that we, are driven to find security and find things that reinforce what we know. We all do that.
Yeah.
And the minute that we expand our knowledge or capacity to take different information in, that all of a sudden increases our capacity to, feel comfortable or feel uncomfortable. So it's a weird cycle there that's just kind of never ending. And you just grab some buoys and float along, I guess.
So what's very fascinating about this whole discussion to me, and
my chair squeaky.
My microphone squeaky?
No, my chair.
Sorry. I didn't hear.
I'll mute myself.
Is the fact that I guess the end game here, or I should say, geez, this is going to be hard. Maybe Glenn can delete all this out. But the cost, or the penalties involved with the LDS Church degree of certainty. If you're really wrong here, there's going to be a giant penalty to pay for eternity, right? Whereas we're on, I guess I feel like I'm on this side of the fence, saying that, there's not this gigantic penalty that you guys are thinking is there. And I'm not sure there's any penalty at all, or there's no, does it matter if I don't believe there's an afterlife? I'm not saying I do or don't, but I'm just saying, we're talking giant degrees of certainty with giant magnitude. And I kind of feel like we're losing relationships with family and friends over that sort of certainty. And because someone is so certain there's an afterlife, then you got to do X, Y, and Z to get to it. And you're not doing that. And because you're not doing that, I'm not going to, continue being your friend or being, I don't know. The whole thing is very fascinating. Why we do that? Why do we build these, these borders, these fences around what we believe is certain to be certain, and then we completely blow off the people and feel like they're our enemy if they don't believe the same, things that we do, that we feel certain about. The whole thing is fascinating to me.
The two things that come up to me, Reed, as you're talking is it sort of sounds like what you're talking about in part is like Pascal's wager, right? The idea that okay, it may be true, it may not be true, but I'm going to act as if it's true because I'm going to be way better off in the end if it is true and I'm right and I've done this all along the way. That whole idea of being separated from your family forever, if you don't, if you fall off the path, which once you fall down the path and roll down the cliff, it's great, I promise. But so that idea of Pascal's wager, and then just what you're getting at just reminds me back of what we were talking about before, of the whole idea of these things aren't necessarily built in purposefully into the church, but it's successful organizations use these ideas, these massive punishments hanging over your head to control group members. You know what I mean? Like whether it's in group or out group, whatever it is.
And motivate. It's like a very motivating factor. It's like with your kids. You know how to lay down the law or incentivize. And it's kind of a well-oiled system there at church, I feel like. But I don't know.
Did you just cover your mouth because you said I don't know again?
Again, yeah. Like, it's true. I feel like I don't need to say that all the time. Anyway.
Yeah.
I guess one other thought I had just listening to you guys here at the end is it's interesting too how the certainty of, you know, like part of your deconstruction process and going through leaving an organization like church, you know, if you're interested in history, you're diving into what they said about history and what happened and, you know, what it meant. And that's evolved over time. The certainty of specific events has changed. And that's confusing. And to me, that just kind of speaks more to that fact that the thing that is the most important is that feeling of security over, you know, truth per se, or the accuracy of, you know, whatever event it was. And it's just interesting to kind of see that now from the outside, like Blacks in the priesthood, motivation behind it. You read talks from back then, it's very clear how they felt about it and what it meant. And now it's very loosey-goosey and nobody really knows. And, you know, the certainty that was there before has really kind of faded away. And, you know, I don't know, that feels like it really leans on that idea of it being motivated by just keeping people safe and protected.
Well, the whole idea of safety, like that is built into our genetic code. You know what I mean? Like to be safe and to
belong,
not die. Yeah, to belong, to be part of a group. Like that's far more important to us as humans than like being logically correct about some assumption, you know?
Totally.
Well, that's, if you have your two kids that are arguing and they're trying to give you the facts about it, and there's a kid just crying and they're hurt, you know, it doesn't really matter what was said. They're hurt, you know, let's take care of these people. I don't know. Yeah, you're motivated by protecting and preserving. It makes sense. Wren, you're a better host.
Oh no, don't know.
I'll just bring the topic and you do the hosting. You're born for this.
All right. I feel like Glenn needs to have either the intro or outro music, a song from the band Aha. You said that so much tonight.
Aha.
Aha.
But there was really so much more to the podcast. I felt like
I know
we've dwelt on the ahas, but there's also they touched on like just being reductive in our answers to giant problems like the depression, you know, and how we're just like, well, what was it? What one thing happened to resolve the depression? And it's like a million things. But why that, to me, that whole discussion touched on the fact that we are storytellers and we live on stories, and we have to have one story to explain everything. And I thought that was really fascinating how, you know, that economist professor was just like, I'm not going to give an answer for that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. And the, you know, the reporter's like, I don't accept that answer. You have to know, this is your profession. He's like, I'm not going to tell you a lie. I have no idea, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that was very noble of him to say. And it's something that I want to emulate a little bit and be like, I don't know. So I think my whole message from those discussions was, we don't know. We're loaded with biases. We're loaded with such limited information in terms of what we take into our bodies, in terms of our senses. We have a million things happening at once. How could we ever really know anything? But that is, I guess as a species, what's gotten us by is being able to reduce all of that stuff to a story and move on and use it as our, a motivator or whatever. I just thought that whole thing was pretty fascinating.
Do you feel do you feel personally, Reed, like it's okay to not know and not be certain?
I'm definitely becoming more comfortable with it. It was so uncomfortable for a long time, not knowing like where I was going after I died or anything like that. But now I feel much more comfortable just saying, yeah, I don't know, and it's okay. It's okay, and it's made me, I guess, forced me to be a little bit more humble about what I know and what I, how I approach conversations about stuff like that, where I should know. My ego says, don't get embarrassed here. Have an explanation, have some strong opinion. And, it's okay to say, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. It's something I think about, but I don't know. I have thoughts. But...
Well, have a good night, guys.
Good night.
It was good talking to you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Put down the weapons that you use against yourself. You don't need them anymore. Lay down the weapons that you use against the world. We don't need another war. Put down the weapons that you use against yourself.
Hi, this is Hillary.
Matthew, Ryan,
Carol,
Keith,
Ashley, and I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did. Anyone for the closing prayer?
My worst crime is an inside job. Dark thoughts taking over like an inside mob. I tune into the scene between the eyes and take a breath.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.
I sit still and watch the thoughts float past me. Never mind the future, never mind what the past be. I like to jump and let the universe catch me. Free fall, watch the beauty blow past me. I keep my pockets light, destination in sight. Keep my actions elevated.
Anything else?
I'm walking past the fight, down onto the night. Choosing love when I pick up this.
No.
I think so.
Well, we have to ask Glenn, like, what are his final thoughts? Thank you, Glenn. That was good.
I really want to start thinking about these things and trying to figure out how I can apply them to professional wrestling. I think I'm going to try to make that my bit. Like, this is demonstrated in WrestleMania number 21.
I'd be interested to hear what Glenn has to say about that.
That's good material.
Yeah.
So we're watching the show. Everyone's watching it.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
Under the banner of heaven.
You guys, I ordered a new bed. It's coming tomorrow. It's an adjustable bed. I'll be able to watch it like this.
We've had one of those for like 10 years now, and I couldn't live without an adjustable bed.
Oh, yay. I'm glad. I was a little skeptical.
Yeah.
My husband's really excited about it. So
tell me what you love about it, Reed.
We kind of adjust the head up a little bit, the feet up a little bit, and I'm addicted to that kind of, it's like a cupping shape. And it's ruined me forever, because now I go to hotel rooms and I'm stuffing pillows under the head and under the feet.
But hold on, do you sleep like that all night?
Yeah.
Oh, feet too? Like your legs up?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is it? Do you have a separate one, or is it all the same?
We used to, and it just broke, but now it's one. But I would recommend getting 2 different beds, honestly.
Didn't do that.
It's okay, it's fine, but because you'll find that your partner probably likes a little different. Like sometimes people sleep on their stomachs, or so we've never really matched our levels. So we always have these fights between like lower the head, and I'm like, no, I need the head higher. So yeah.
Okay. Wow.
I just stand ominously over my wife when she sleeps. So my bed thing is like we have a mattress that we bought a few years ago. Glenn's gonna cut all this out, right?
Yeah, of course, sure. Yeah, why not?
We bought a mattress a few years ago that's like, it's like one of these online, I can't remember what kind it is, but it has like 2 different softnesses, like one firm and one soft side. And so like you can flip it or whatever, but we use the soft side, but I always want the firm side. And I consistently am telling my wife I'm going to cut the mattress in half and flip my side to the firm side. And like, it might be the end of our marriage if I do that at some point here, but I'm positive that I could do it, that I could. Anyway.
I think it's a good idea.
Folks, this week's Infants on Thrones brought to you by the Sleep Number Pediatric. Get yours. Promo code Sleepy Infants.
Promo code AHA. 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 AHA.
I feel like Glenn needs to have either the intro or outro music, a song from the band AHA.
Talking away, I don't know what I'm to say, I'll say it anyway. Today is my last day to find you. You're hiding away. I'll be coming for you anyway. Take on me. Take on me. Take me on. Take on me. I'll be gone in a day or two.
Whew, I really just want to see how long I can hold that.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.